Hello, hello, hi, everyone. I'm going to wait for people to join, and I'm about to go live with my grandfather, Kabir Bedi, and I'm super excited, so I'm going to wait for him to join now. There we go.
Can you see
Hi,
me? Can you
Nana.
hear me?
I can hear you.
I
Can you hear me?
I can hear you well.
Wonderful. How are you, Nana?
I'm terrific. Double vaccinated, double good,
Oh,
double safe,
amazing.
double happy, double
Oh,
everything.
yay. And you should be double happy because we're here to discuss your lovely, lovely book stories, I must tell today.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I
Double
must say, Nana.
vision of the double vision of the book as well.
Yes. And it's such an amazing book. I've said this already to you. It's such an easy read, such a wonderful read. It's so honest, so readable, and I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed it. And I'm so happy to be discussing this with you here today.
No, absolutely, Alia. Alaya, the thing is, I when I wrote this book, I wrote it for your generation. It's dedicated. Uh, to all young techies like my son Siddharth and all young people that want to make the world a better place. Because I feel that for whatever life that I've led across continents, the roller coaster existence of being an actor across many continents and all the ups and downs that come with it, there's something that everyone can learn from here, and many things that today's generation need to know of the times that were, what was the 60s like, what were the 70s like, what are the mistakes I made, what are the triumphs that I enjoyed. So there's a lot in there for your generation. and how do you
Definitely.
and how do you call your generation? Are you Gen Z? Are you the Zoomers? Are you
That's a very good question. I'm constantly wondering that. Someone once told me that I'm a millennial, but then I found out I'm not a millennial. Then someone told me I'm Gen Z. So I have no idea. If someone knows what I am, I'm 23 years old. Please tell me what generation am I? Because I have
you're
no
the
idea.
Zoomers. You're the Zoomers. You're the Zoomers. You're
We're the
all
Zoomers.
flowering in the age of Zoom.
Literally, so accurate now. But no, what did you enjoy most about writing this book, Nana? I want to know.
Alaya, I basically enjoyed writing the book. This book had been bottled up in me for so long. I knew I had a terrific story to tell, a terrific story to share, and I just didn't know how to do it. And when I figured out how I was going to tell this story, it just flowed like a river, and it just came out of me. So telling it like it was, telling it as authentically as I could, keeping in mind all the things that the triumphs I had, the tragedies I had, I just decided to tell it like it is. Let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah,
Because if I just made it a book of my triumphs, it would be no joy really for anybody but the most die-hard fans.
yeah.
And I made various attempts to write my book, and I threw it in the trash can because I'm not interested in reading this book. I want to write a book that's unputdownable. And the most enjoyable part of the writing was the writing itself. And now the kind of reviews I've got make me feel top of the world, absolutely top of the world.
And they're so well deserved because it is a book that I thoroughly enjoyed. And I think everyone I know has thoroughly enjoyed. I went to get my hair done today, and there it was. Your book was sitting right there. And even, uh, there I was hearing about what a wonderful book it is. And, each chapter is so interesting. And, if I had to go and pick a favorite chapter, it's extremely hard. But do you have a favorite chapter?
Yes, I'd say the chapter on my parents, but then that's because I love and adore them so much, and also because their story was so remarkable. My story
Yeah.
might be in the world of film across three continents, Bollywood, Europe, Hollywood, and everything. But here were people that lived in totally idealistic times, people who gave up everything. for the freedom of the country and sacrificed so much for it. And then they went on to, my mother went on to help the refugees in Kashmir, refugees in Tibet. From revolutionaries, they became religious figures. And they were able to support each other and understand each other, even though their beliefs differed. And it's such a touching human story that has to be my favorite chapter. And
Yeah, I mean,
my, I'd even joined my mother in her journey into Buddhism. She went on to become the highest ranked Buddhist nun in the world, as you know. So
yes, of course.
I'd also accompanied her to Burma and become a Buddhist monk for that period of my life. 3 months I was um, there, head shaven, joining the monks in the morning for alms on the streets of Rangoon, learning meditation from a great meditation master. And that meditation has stayed with me all my life. It helped me um, uh, overcome a lot of the difficulties I faced. Um, Even helped me weather my greatest successes because, there are perils both in success and in failure.
Definitely.
And learning how to ride that through is quite an art, quite an art. So my parents' chapter is something that I would write even if they were not my parents, because it's such an amazing human story of people who came together in the strangest ways, lived the most amazing lives, and continued to be soulmates, even when divided by religions and continents.
Yeah, that was such a moving chapter. I remember at the end of most of the chapters, actually, I had tears in my eyes and goosebumps at the same time. Each chapter was so moving, and that, of course, was, an especially moving one. Also, because, everyone in the book, I know also,
It's
it's
your
my
history too,
family too, which
Alaya.
is
It's your history too. It's your family. It's your nana. It's your nani. It's your
it's
history
so
too. So
incredible to know that I come from such wonderful history. It was so wonderful to read. Um, was there a chapter that was the easiest for you to write, and which one was the hardest? Is what I want to know.
the easiest was my chapter that begins the book, where as a cub reporter, I managed to get an interview with the Beatles, who were my
Yeah,
gods. And, getting that interview was such a scoop. And I really had to con my way into that interview, persuade this manager to somehow give me the interview. And in the end, he said, I'll do the interview. And then he wasn't well, and he took me to the door and said, boys, do me a favor, give this fellow an interview. And I was in with the Beatles. So meeting the Beatles wasn't just, meeting musicians that I admired. They represented the entire 60s, the entire excitement of that generation, that the hippie generation, the counterculture generation, the generation that was demonstrating against the Vietnam War, the generation that got freedom because sexual freedom, because the pill had been invented and the fear of unwanted pregnancy was taken away. So it was a generation full of rebellion. And that rebellion was part of me, part of my generation. To meet the Beatles was. And then what happened with the Beatles and how All India Radio treated that interview so badly became a turning
yeah,
point in my life. So telling that chapter was perhaps the easiest. The hardest was perhaps the one where I talk about my son Siddharth's suicide. And then, how does a father try to prevent a son committing suicide? I mean, that is uh, a deeply human um, problem. It was and it's your son you're talking about. And what I went through, and people lived that experience with me. The way I've written it, whatever happened, I um, I detailed it as closely, as honestly as I could. So people actually are like a fly on the wall, watching everything happen. And I'm
yeah,
talking about your uncle.
yeah.
So it was a very difficult chapter to write, but I think a very deeply human chapter to write because he was such an extraordinary boy on the verge of the greatest success in the internet age, having graduated from Carnegie Mellon. Um, he could have had anything and everything before him.
Yeah.
And when that happens to a young man, it is a massive tragedy. And when it happens to your son,
I can't even imagine. Oh, Nana, I can't hear you.
but it was not easy.
I can't even
Sorry,
imagine. I
can you
mean,
hear me now?
reading it, I can hear you now. Can you hear me, Nana?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. I
I
can
was
hear you
so
now.
moved when I was so moved when I read that chapter, and because a lot of it was stories that I had heard, but I had never heard from you. So it was so interesting to hear it from your point of view and hear, how all of it happened from your point of view. Because even though, of course, you're my nana, and we've had so many conversations over the 23 years of my life, there are so many stories that I didn't know about, especially from your perspective, told so honestly and properly. And of course, I've
Yes.
heard many stories from my mother. One of which was that every summer she would fly down to America while you were staying in America and working in Hollywood, and all the amazing times you and Siddharth Mama and Mama would have over there. So, how was it incorporating them into your life in America? Was it hard? Were there sacrifices that had to be made? Was it easy? How was it having them there every year for the summer, and having that time with them and introducing them to your life there?
Whenever there's a divorce, it's always a tragedy, and the biggest sufferers are the children. But even though I divorced your nanny, I never ever divorced my children. So the children had to be brought to me in their vacations, or I would come in their vacations when I would fly from America. So there was no sacrifice involved. I mean, there was a cost involved, but that didn't matter. What mattered was spending time with them.
Of
And
course.
whenever there's whenever there's a divorce, uh, people always talk about quality time. Of course, quality time is important, but quantity is also important. And one of my
Yeah.
great regrets is that I couldn't give enough quantity time. So I tried to make it up by having the best time I could with them when they came, and that's what mattered to me: being able to have that time with them,
Yeah.
and make the most of it, and give them what I could of me and my life and my learning in that time. But those were very special times I spent with your mother and your uncle,
Yeah.
because they spent their last few years of high school with me. They came and lived there in America with me. Then Pooja returned to Bombay to begin her Bollywood career, and Siddharth stayed on to go to university, first Carnegie Mellon and then Chapel Hill in North Carolina.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was always on my mind to keep them as part of my life, and that was something I managed to do. I always regret that I couldn't spend more time with them, but then that's what happens in divorces. And
Yeah.
what I want to say to you and your generation is there's the two most important decisions that you'll have to make in your life. One is who's going to be your partner in life, who's going to be the mother or father of your children. These are vital decisions, and how you're going to make your living. Now,
Yeah.
a lot of us and you make our decisions on who to marry in states of high emotion when we fall in love, etc. But when we fall in love, our faculties are not fully at work. It's one of those tricks that nature plays on us. And nobody sort of makes checklists from beforehand and says, when I fall in love, I'm going to go back to this checklist and see, does this person measure up to what I had in mind? Because when you're in love, you forgive all the faults, you see only the good things,
Totally.
and you hope they'll change in ways that you don't like about them right now. But there's a saying, they say women marry men thinking they'll change, and men marry women thinking they won't
Hoping.
change, and they do.
Yeah.
So
I
the
think that's so
important thing
true. And
there,
even your book, it details so many complex relationships and equations that you've had in your life, which is again so amazing to read. Nanima's book as well, which sits right there, and your book normally sits there as well. Both are such interesting takes on, sometimes like you've quoted Nanima's book within your book, which I
Yes,
loved
yes,
reading because it was so interesting, because you described how you saw an event and then what she saw from it, which is
yeah,
so interesting. In fact, I might
yes.
soon go back and read that again too, just to see, because I feel like both are so honest but so different, because everyone has the version that they remember and the things that the way they remembered it, which is just as accurate, which I think is so interesting. Um, but back onto Mama and Siddharth Mama, both are obviously two very different individuals, much like me and Omar, in a lot of ways. How was it having two children that were so different? Was your approach to them different? Because even in the book I was reading, and the way you talk about both is so different. So tell me a little more about that.
Um, all my stories have a big emotional quotient to them. That's why I've called it stories I must tell the emotional life of an actor. So I've tried to tell it through the prism of my emotions of people that I've known and loved. And in this story, I really was able to devote more time to Siddharth because I did a whole chapter on his final year.
Yeah,
And Pooja, of course, weaves in and out of the story from her childhood uh, right through to
yeah,
the end. So they were two radically different individuals in the same way that you and Omar are. And
yeah.
a parent can't say, I prefer this child and I prefer that child, because you love each child for what's unique about each child. I felt that I managed to spend um, more time on Siddharth because that chapter demanded that I do that. Pooja always had boundless energy about her. And Siddharth was the one who was constantly introspective, curious about life, more like me inwardly. I mean, I seem like an extrovert. I seem like a very big, bluff guy who can talk before 5,000 people. But really, inside myself, I am an introvert. And I related to that part of Siddharth. And so losing him was a huge blow. And I must say that I'm blessed that I still have Pooja with me and her dynamism. But in that chapter with Siddharth, I did want to address the issue of mental health and how the
So
afflicted
important.
uh, deserve sympathy, but equally the caregivers who give up so much for them.
Yeah. And what's so interesting is at that point, mental health wasn't so spoken about as it is now and
No,
how it is coming to the foreground now. But still,
right.
the way you've dealt with it and the way you talk about dealing with it in the book is how everyone should be dealing with it, which is getting the right help, trying to be patient, trying to teach, trying to be there, which can sometimes be so hard, right? Because sometimes they don't want you around, sometimes they don't want to talk. But it's so interesting to see how you dealt with it even back then, when perhaps a lot of people would not take mental health seriously, which I think is so important, and it's so relevant even today, because I feel like now that the conversation is coming into the foreground, now is such a wonderful time to get this story out, in so many different ways. And I mean, you lived such a colorful life back when it was so scandalous and so forward thinking in so many ways, which is so interesting. The fact that these stories happened all that time ago, but they could have very well happened like right now, and how relevant they still are today. I think that's such an amazing aspect of the book that I really, really enjoyed, which is why I think probably you get to know about that time while still feeling so connected, and why it's still so relatable in a lot of ways.
See, Alaya, there was a time when I was as young as you, and there was a time, and there was a time when I was as well known as you. There was a time when I've been the rebel in the family. Um, that rebellion has never left me because that's the way I am. I am the eternal rebel in a sense, and therefore um, that quality has not changed. But what I have learned is to see things with more compassion with age. I see my younger self. I see the younger your Prothima as a younger woman. I
Yeah.
see all the people in my life who mattered to me with compassion. And at the end of the day, um, I survived. You know, the enormous um, successes that I had, but also the incredible downfall that I had and the problems that I had, even a bankruptcy in America, and how I
Yeah.
rose from that. And there are lessons in all that because there are many lessons. I mean, how does a marriage like I had with your Nani go from a normal marriage into an open marriage? What happened? How do people go there? How do people live in an open marriage? What is it like to live? Does it work? Doesn't it work? All those things. How does one navigate such success that you thought it belonged to the Beatles and be given to you, and yet retain your sanity, and yet
Yeah.
retain your humility? And you learn that be kind to everyone on the way up because you're going to meet them on the way down.
Yeah.
So that
You
gives
know,
you a certain perspective on life.
and
Even how to rise from the ashes is important. So I've learned from my mistakes, and I hope people learn from my mistakes by not making those mistakes. See,
yeah.
there's two reasons why people read an autobiography. One is to know about the person, and
Yeah.
the other is to say, what's in it for me? And what's in it for a reader is to say, what did he do wrong that I shouldn't do wrong? That might
Yeah.
save people years of their lives, might save them all kinds of relationships they shouldn't get into. Ask the right questions before getting into relationships, and not just in the moment when you're overwhelmed with love, because that is
Yeah.
the wrong time to make those decisions.
Yes.
Um, and it's okay to fail. It's okay to fail, but it's not okay to lose hope. It's not
Yeah.
okay to stop believing in yourself. It's not okay to give up and allow despondency to take over. Those are things which you see in other people's life and say, well, if he could do it, I could do it. What,
Yeah.
you know, he wasn't uh, sort of ordained by God to do these things. We are all human. We are all on the same journey. We are all on the same planet. And we learn from each other's successes and failures. And I think I've learned from mine, and I hope other people do too.
Which is
Because that's
what
that's
most
that's what being human is about.
definitely. I have a question here because I think this is the perfect time to get this question in, which is, like, it's very evident in your book, and like everyone knows that you've had a very, very touchwood, wonderful career that spanned so many different continents. Was there ever a time when you got arrogant? And if you didn't, then how did you not? But was there ever a time where the successes of life did get to you? And, especially me starting out in this industry now, a lot of the time, the first thing people say to me is, don't let it get to your head. Don't get arrogant. So I want to hear your version of that now.
It's a very good question because, really speaking, within myself, I didn't get arrogant. But having joined Bollywood, having had a few successes, then suddenly being picked by the Italians and becoming a big star in Italy, I thought it would be much easier in Hollywood.
Yeah.
I was arrogant enough to think I'm just going to breeze through Hollywood. What I got from Hollywood was lovely. I got the Bond film, I got The Bold and Beautiful, I got wonderful with Michael Caine. But what I didn't realize is at that time people weren't writing roles for Indians. So it was very, very hard to even get the roles
Yeah.
if there's no roles being written for you. So I think that knocked a bit of the arrogance out of me, whatever little arrogance I had developed. But I'm not an arrogant person by nature.
Not at
I
all.
have a great equanimity within me, which I think I got from my parents, I got from my meditation, I got from the, who I am. I never am attached to say, thinking that if I become a big star, this is the way it's going to be all my life. I'm going to rule the roost, and that's the end of it. I never had that, and if I when I didn't see that, um, it was also okay. I found ways of overcoming that. So let's say there were moments of arrogance, but I'm far from being an arrogant person.
Yeah.
Um, you know, a lot of my strength, inner strength, I got from my parents. And I must say, my mother's journey into Buddhism helped me a lot. But I do remember the wonderful incident where I wrote in my book that even though I'd been her partner in this journey into Buddhism, when she actually suddenly appeared before me, head shaven, maroon robes of a Tibetan nun, I was outraged. I thought, how could she do this to me? I was all of 18 years old, and I felt I'd lost a mother. And how could she do this to me without telling me? I'd been a partner in discovery of Buddhism. I'd become a Buddhist monk in Burma. And she looked at me and she realized my anger and she said, who decides when an apple falls to the ground? And in that moment, I understood what she said because she was telling me the moment was right. And I also realized that if she told me, she would have had to tell my brother, my sister, God knows what storms that would have created. But more importantly, she wrote me a beautiful letter after that, say, sensing my pain, sensing my anger, and saying, you know, I gave you love and protection as a mother when you were growing up. Now I need your love and protection. I am the one in need of that. And it was so touching and moving that it brought tears to my eyes. And I thought, of course, I have to protect my mother on the journey she's on now.
That's so moving. That's such a
And that
lovely,
was the
lovely,
bond that I had with her. That was the bond that I had with her.
and that's such a special bond to have. And I feel like there are so many wonderful stories, much like this one, that are a part of your book, and each story is just as interesting and just as full of life and full of so much vibrancy. And it really is such a treat to read. And writing a book is no small accomplishment. It is a huge one. And I want to play a small fun game with you on this note, if you want to. I want to test
All
your
right.
millennial lingo. I want to know if you know what these millennial words mean. Since you've written a book, I thought it'd be super fun to test your millennial lingo.
You got to test my millennial lingo knowledge.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
I thought that'd be fun for everyone to watch. So I selected a few words, and I think you'll do good, Nana. I think
I'm
so.
not
I'll
sure.
start with
I'm not sure.
I'll
But
start
I'll
with
give it a
easy.
go. I'll give anything a go. I'm up for any challenge.
So, okay, should I start?
Yeah.
Okay. First is quite easy. I think you should know this one. YOLO. What does
YOLO.
YOLO mean?
YOLO is you only live once.
Yeah, correct. That's very correct. See, I told you it's not going to be that bad. Okay, FOMO.
Fear of missing out.
Yes. Okay, now I'll go a little harder, slightly harder. It goes in order. I wanted to start off well. ROFL.
ROFL. Rolling on the floor laughing.
Yes, well done, Nana. I'm very impressed. I didn't think you'd get that one. Okay, the other one. Lit.
Huh?
Lit. Like that's lit.
That's lit.
Yeah.
LIT.
Yeah.
That's lit. You beat me there. What does it mean?
Lit
Is
is
it
like,
hot?
oh, like that's
Is it
great.
hot?
Like,
Hot.
oh yeah, I went to that place and it was so lit. Like it was like totally like full of life and I loved it and it was lit. It's
Okay, I
like a
learned
word of
something new
approval.
here. Okay. It was
Okay.
so lit. Okay, I like that.
Yeah. Slaps.
Slap.
Yeah. Slaps.
Slap. Don't have a clue.
Again, something of the same vibe, which is like, oh, that song slaps. Like it just hits so hard. Like I really like
Okay,
it.
something that hits you hard. Really.
Yeah,
That's
something
a,
that you really
so
like.
how
Like,
do you
oh
use
yeah,
the
that
term?
song slaps.
You say the song is a slap, or you say that's so slap.
That song slaps.
That song slap. Okay, got it.
Yeah. Okay, I'll do the last one. The last one is sus. Like,
Sucks.
oh, that person is so sus. SUS.
SUS.
Yeah.
So sussed out. So cool.
No,
No.
suspicious.
Oh, suspicious. Okay.
Yeah, that's so sus.
Okay. Okay.
I think you
Uh,
did quite well, Nana. I think you got the whole, like, there are many in
I
here that
got
I did not
YOLO, I got
expect.
FOMO.
And you got
um,
ROFL. Not
ROFL,
bad.
yeah.
Not bad at
Three
all.
out of six. 3 out of 6.
Which is so
Um,
good.
that's not bad at all. Uh,
Yeah. But
what
yeah,
would what would no? Um, I'm trying to think of terms that we use that you might not know. But what I've noticed that is how the contraction of language takes place. For instance, the word "for a moment" has now become um, momentarily. In a moment has become momentarily, whereas
yeah,
earlier it meant for a moment,
correct.
and most possibly has become mostly, uh,
Yeah.
and all those contractions have taken place. But language evolves, and that's the beauty of language. We
No,
enjoy reinventing, and that's the job of every generation, to shock the last generation, to push the envelope forward, to create new idioms, to create new forms, to create new cultures, new songs.
yeah,
And that's the most exciting thing to see. So,
yeah.
and
And
your
it's so
generation
interesting.
but let me ask you one thing.
Yeah.
Your generation is entering a very strange and wonderful, or strange and different world, let's say. Because Gulzar, the great poet, said something very beautiful. He said, खुद से ज्यादा मैं अपने मोबाइल को संभाल के रखता हूं क्योंकि अब सारे रिश्ते इसी में कैद हैं. All your relationships are now
Yeah.
contained in your mobile. So
Yeah.
if all relationships are on videos or video calls or on your phone or mobiles, how does your generation make new friends? How do you meet new groups of people? Because the old ones you've got in your phone bank.
Yeah.
That's the question that I was
Social
puzzled by,
media.
curious about. What,
That is the magic of social media. The fact that you can meet and get to know so many people. In fact, I think thanks to social media and thanks to the internet, I've managed to make so many more friends and meet so many more people, and get so many more interesting perspectives on how other people see life and view life. And I feel like everything has its ups and downs. Like, there are times where I look at my phone and I've just had enough of it. I just want to
mhm.
sort of slap it away and not look at it because it's so overwhelming and I'm just done. But then there are times where I need my phone. It's sort of one of those things for everyone now. If you leave the home, if you leave your home without your phone, you feel like something is missing. You
Right, right,
for me, it almost feels like I've, like, left my arm back at home or something. Because
right,
especially
right.
now, thanks to COVID and lockdowns and everything, work happens on the phone, work happens on your laptop, thanks to the internet and thanks to everything that has progressed now. We're able to still continue life and continue working.
So there'll be a lot more virtual friendships as well. People discovering each
Yeah,
other on the internet, discovering
definitely.
shared interests, shared opinions, shared heroes, shared villains. Um,
Yeah.
so that's a whole new world. And you are growing up. Your generation is growing up in a very different world, and all of you are going to have to adapt in a number of
Definitely.
ways. But some of the age-old truths of what it takes to be in a relationship, what it takes to, how do you enter a relationship? Why should you enter into a relationship? How you should be ultra careful at these turning points in your life? How crises can be points of power? All these things remain the same.
Yeah.
But there will be um, many other joys in reading the book, including the fact that I've written it very simply. Was there a certain favorite part of the book for you,
It's so hard for me to pick a favorite part of the book. As I've
or
mentioned
something that
before,
surprised
also,
you the
I
most?
surprised me the most. Um, Good question. I mean, a lot of this was stories that I had heard from you and from Mama and from everyone. This was just a very in depth version of everything, and a very interesting, like, because it was your perspective, and I don't think I'd heard a lot of these stories from you.
Yeah.
That was the most amazing part for me to read, you know. I loved it. I have so many favorite chapters, and I was moved by so many chapters. I think the one that oddly enough stood out to me so much was Ramblings on a Beach. The
Ah,
whole
my sister.
story you wrote when you were 29, if I'm not wrong. That is
Right,
incredible.
right,
I
right,
mean, to
right, right.
have that sort of perspective on everything at the age of 29, and then talking about how a lot of that has changed over the years and what hasn't changed over the years. Writing that and reading something that you had written at that age, which is quite close to mine, was quite amazing to
Hmm.
read, you know, because the perspective that you had and the way it was
Hmm.
written, the beauty of the language with which it was written was so incredible, you know. It almost made me want to go and pick up a lot more books and start reading a lot more so that I could
Right,
get my language there too.
right. What would you and your generation and your friends and followers get out of my book? What would they get out of it that would be of value to them?
I mean, it's all about human emotion and how you know, with all your experience, have dealt with these particular situations and grown from it and
Hmm.
consistently grown from it. And I think that is a lesson that is always relevant and always necessary, and always wonderful to read, especially when it's told so beautifully. You know, I
Thank you for
feel
that.
like you've been through so much in your life, good and bad, and you know, everything. And I think it's so refreshing to hear something that is so wonderfully honest but so wonderfully self-aware, which is
Yes.
what I love
Yeah.
most about the book. I feel like it's a very, very self-aware book, you know, where you're talking about what you've done and then where perhaps you might have been wrong and then where perhaps you felt a certain way and you felt like that was the right way to be. um,
Mm.
I like the honesty and the self-awareness in it. And
Right.
you know, when the ups and downs of life are told in that way, I feel like there's so much to learn from it. um,
Right.
you know, I learned so much from it, and I thought it was
Well,
just amazing.
Alaya, you're on the cusp of a great career, beginning a whole new life of your own. I just want you to know you have all my blessings, and may you
Thank
have
you.
triumphs bigger than mine, and may you avoid all the mistakes I made, and may you celebrate life with as much joy as I did, and just know that I'm very proud of you and all you've achieved so
Thank you,
far.
Nana. Thank you, Nana. Love you. And I hope
Love
everyone
you too.
picks up this book and reads it, because it really is such a wonderful book. I think everyone should go and pick up Stories I Must Tell. And I
That's the
promise
one.
you, you will not be disappointed in any way, shape, or form. It is such a wonderful read and such an easy read. Um, it is just wonderful. You won't be able to put it down once you pick it up. That is my promise.
Thank you for saying that, Alaya. I'm also looking forward to releasing the book in Italy in September with Italy's biggest publisher, because Italy has given me so
Amazing.
much. I mean, they've knighted me, they made me a cavaliere. So there's a whole separate audience that is that knows me literally as a household word, and I hope to share the book with them in the same way that I've shared it in India, and most especially as I've shared it with you, because this is your history, and I'm glad I'm able to put it down so you know what it is. And I just pray that you go from strength to strength.
Thank you, Nana. Thank you. I'm so happy we did this live session
I'm
interview, and I hope
delighted we
everyone
did
enjoyed.
this. I'm
Yeah.
delighted.
And I hope everyone enjoyed watching it and tuning in. We've had lots of people coming in and going out and staying, and lots of wonderful comments that I've been reading briefly below. So I think a lot
I
of
know,
people
I've been
really
seeing
enjoyed.
a stream of hearts going up the screen
Yeah, the
all
stream of
throughout the
hearts
thing.
has been consistent.
Right, 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 right. So how wonderful that. Thank you all for the hearts you're sending, and thank you for tuning into this chat between Alaya and me. It's a very special moment between uh, granddad and granddaughter, and just know that I am I am so proud of her, and I look forward to being taught even more of your lingo by her.
I definitely will. Thank you, Nana.
Okay, bye now.
Bye.